So this story that hit earlier on this week really piqued a lot of people's interest in the sports media and NBA world, and we want to break it down here on the Sports Cubicle. I'm your host, Mike Mercado, and Doc Rivers is now the head coach of the Milwaukee Bucks. This news story broke in the middle of a NBA TV, NBA TNT segment. CNN Sports broke the news. Not Woj, not Shams, but it ended up being true. The next day, it ended up being broken everywhere. All the major reporters, they confirm it, and Doc Rivers is now back in the NBA. And I want to check this out from Yahoo Sports. This is from Jason Owens. Bucks hired Doc Rivers as head coach with hopes that he can lead them to a championship. Doc Rivers is back in the NBA. The Milwaukee Bucks have hired Rivers as their head coach after firing Adrian Griffin 43 games into his tenure. ESPN Adrian Wojnarowski reported on Wednesday. Rivers takes over a 30-13 as of this recording Bucks team, sitting 3.5 games behind the Boston Celtics in second place in the Eastern Conference as of this recording. The Bucks hired Rivers with their sights squarely set on a second NBA championship in 4 seasons. Milwaukee stunned the NBA by dismissing Adrian Griffin Tuesday amid the 30-13 start. Griffin took over this season for the fired Mike Budenholzer, who was fired last offseason after the top-seeded Bucks fell in the first round of the playoffs to the Miami Heat. General manager John Horst declined to elaborate on why Griffin was fired in a brief statement announcing the decision, but a decline on defense and analytics measures may have convinced Milwaukee's brass that Griffin wasn't the man to lead the Bucks to a championship. Horst then clarified his decision on Wednesday ahead of the Bucks game against the Cleveland Cavaliers and insisted that Griffin hadn't lost the locker room before he was fired. Quote, "This is not about players' comments," Horst said via ESPN. "This is not about things said or unsaid. This is my job. This is an organization's job at the top to evaluate every single day all areas of the organization and feel like whether we're getting or not getting the most we can out of that group. If we feel like we can maximize the talent of this group better, we made a change. That's why we made it." End quote. And we suggest you check out the entire article by Jason Owens. Bucks hired Doc Rivers as head coach with hopes that he can lead them to a championship. And there's so much to break down about this, right? Like, Milwaukee brought in Doc Rivers as an advisor this season. And I guess he advised ownership to be like, "I think I'm probably the guy to be the coach of this team." And a horrible Doc Rivers impression. But, I mean, that's kind of sus, right? Like, you go in and you're advising to fire the coach so that you could become the coach of Giannis? And let's talk about Giannis, my favorite player in the NBA. I wish he was playing at the United Center as a Chicago Bull and not as a Buck. But we know he was the guy that wanted to bring in Adrian Griffin after firing Boot, right? Like, we knew that was the case. And every major player in the NBA has gotten a head coach fired. It's just part of the becoming part of the club. This is a team that's in title contention, a top seed in the Eastern Conference. And what's really telling is then watching how the players' body language and how they were acting the first game post-firing of Adrian Griffin. And you hear a lot about people liking Adrian Griffin off the court or as a guy, as a bench member of your coaching staff. But for him to get fired before the All-Star break in his first season is a huge telling sign that they may say he didn't lose the locker room, but that man lost the locker room. And it had to be so bad because they are now paying Budenholzer and Adrian Griffin and now Doc Rivers, who just signed a deal up to 2026-2027 season. It's unbelievable. It is unbelievable. But I do give him credit about this. Unlike what we were saying here in Chicago, right, about the Bears and what we saw with Jed Hoyer and the Cubs, the difference. They made a move because they want to win now. They don't want to waste any part of their window. And if they think that this is what's going to get them closer to that, they're going to do it. Now, I believe Doc Rivers, as good of a coach as he may be, he is very much in question as a head coach in the NBA when it comes to winning a championship. And the decisions he makes come playoff time when games matter, outside of one season in Boston. So there are plenty of things to talk about. But I do give props to ownership of Milwaukee. They made a move. They were not going to waste their time. They're not going to waste their time that they have with Dame after all that nonsense they had to go through to trade for him in Portland, trying to beat out and box out Miami for Dame Lillard. And now you're trying to keep Giannis happy? Winning cures all. And it felt, even though as a third seed, only 3.5 games back, winning wasn't solving what was going on with the Milwaukee Bucks. But they have to play better defense. They already changed how they're playing defense compared to Adrian Griffin, what he was doing, bringing that defense from Toronto to Milwaukee. But now it's on the Bucks players. And it's on Doc Rivers. Because if you were going to be there as a front office advisor and find a way on that bench, you better win a finals. You better make a run. So, and shout out to Adrian Griffin, who wasn't going to resign because he was going to make sure that you were going to fire me. So I got every bit of that money coming to me. So crazy stuff, though. Let us know your thoughts. What do you think about this? Adrian Griffin out as coach of the Milwaukee Bucks, and now Doc Rivers is the head coach of Giannis and the Milwaukee Bucks. We got more coming up next here on the Sports Cubicle and Sports from the Couch. I'm your host, Mike Mercado. Make sure you're following us on Twitter at Sports Cubicle TV. We're on SoundCloud on WCPT 820. Make sure you check us out there. And, of course, wherever you get your favorite podcasts at Sports from the Couch. Check out the video version of all our podcasts over on YouTube at the Sports Cubicle.